to share the story of Factor X deficiency and what my family has gone through for so many reasons, because we have so many experiences that, good and bad, that I would like to share so that some people don't necessarily have to go through some of the things that we did go through. When my son was born, he started having bleed in between his scalp and his skull. And they treated that with FFP. And right then and there, they were diagnosing him with Factor X deficiency. And then after that, he had a belly button bleed. We went ahead and stayed in the hospital after he was born until his circumcision was over. And at that point, so they had treated him with some more FFP for his circumcision. He did have one muscle bleed at about 3 weeks of age. It was just picking him up underneath his armpits, like how you normally would pick up a little baby underneath their armpits. And he had a little bruise right under there that just wouldn't go away. And he ended up not using his arm for a few days. And so we realized that was yet another bleed. They did find a PCC that they would be able to use, but we still were not being given it as a preventative prophylactic care at that point. And then at 5 weeks of age, he had a brain bleed. And that was just horrific because it was major brain damage. It ended up giving him major brain damage, and it was just a horrible situation. At the time after the brain bleed and we started having to see neurologists for his brain damage, and it was very intense brain damage. So they did say that it was going to be a fairly bleak outlook for my son. He was going to probably never walk. He would probably never talk. And it was going to be a really hard road for him. And he was even blind for a while. He was blind for about 9 months. We obviously were very hungry for more information, and we needed more information desperately. So when he did have his brain bleed, we were at a bigger hospital. And so one of the nurses that was doing some wonderful care for us during that stay, he told me that there was a library in the basement of that hospital, and that even I as a patient could go down there and look through their material. And so I did. Many of the things that we learned about was, one, that Factor X deficiency could cause intracranial bleeding, or it could be any kind of nervous system bleeding if it's that severe. And we also learned of all the other symptoms that it possibly could have too, of the joint bleeding, the muscle bleeding, and all the other symptoms. One of the things that we also learned about was we understood how rare it was, which also just put us in such a horrible category of feeling like we were completely alone in the world. When Gabe was doing a little bit better, we started thinking about having another child. When we had our second baby, it's just elation. New life is so exciting, and she was beautiful and precious. And of course, we were just thrilled to have her in our lives. And I remember just the doctor walking in and saying, she does not have Factor X. And I'm holding her, and I'm I know she's absolutely beautiful, and of course she doesn't have Factor X. But then he quickly tried to explain to me, no, she doesn't have any Factor X in her body, so therefore she does have Factor X deficiency. And being elated as a new mom, it took me a few minutes to truly realize what he actually meant by that. The healthcare team wanted to go ahead and start doing preventative care even prior to any kind of bleeding episode, just because we knew everything that my son went through and the severity levels that she actually did have, that we just wanted to protect her, period. My daughter started having prophylactic care the day that they found out that she had Factor X deficiency. When my kids were little, the symptoms that they had were sort of if you can say normal factor 10 symptoms, as in having bumps and bruises, and that we'd have to take care of them. As they grew a little bit older, they both developed different kinds of symptoms. My son pretty much only had his neurological bleeding when he was an infant, and then we kept him pretty safe for the most part. He had a couple breakout bleeds of like a nosebleed here or there, and a couple different bleeds that it was just trauma-based, as in he hit his knee or something like that. But other than that, he never really had any other bleeds after he was on preventative care. Our daughter had many more symptoms as she grew up, and she definitely bled differently than my son did. And she had many bleeds, breakout bleeds of like joints, muscle, even gum bleeds. And her menses became very, very difficult to manage. When my children were younger, they took a product, a PCC product, and it was every 3 days, which became very confusing because it would be a different day throughout the week. And so it would be very hard to schedule, and it was becoming longer and longer as they grew, because we'd have to have more volume and more volume. And so yes, we were getting quite concerned about how long the whole treatment would last because of how big they were becoming. And we usually did them both together at the same time, so it would be quite an ordeal every single treatment day. When the children were smaller, their infusions took about 40 minutes. And knowing that when they were going to be bigger, 40 minutes seemed like it was going to be unbelievably long by the time that they were a much bigger person. But now that there is Coagadex, it's much, much quicker, and we can push in the medication much faster. When my kids were younger, we tried really hard to not overprotect them, but I became quite overprotective at times, just trying to make sure that they would stay safe and make sure that they didn't fall down and hurt themselves and different things like that. However, we tried to go ahead and have as much fun as we could, and at that time we did try to sort of change our perspective of living life. We realized how my son came through so many obstacles that we just wanted to change our life perspective a little bit and just enjoy life a little bit more fully. So we bought an RV, we packed our factor, we had our travel letter from our doctor, and we traveled the United States quite a bit, and we tried to let our children be able to see that they can live life fully. Our doctor had mentioned that there was going to be a straight factor 10 deficient product, and he didn't know very much more about it. So I went ahead and I called BPL and asked them, how much longer? When can we have it? Oh, I can't wait for this to happen. BPL let me know that it is available, and so I got my doctor to call them to get it going and to let our doctor and BPL collaborate to be able to let my kids start having it. Our doctor was pretty excited about having Coagadex available to our kids too, so we were all on the same page, and he went ahead and had it in office. We decided to go ahead and have both of our kids try it at the same time, and we went into the clinic and did a treatment there for the first time all together. Today, all these amazing years later, my son is 25 years old. He's doing very, very well. Neurologists had told us he would not walk or talk, but he is doing great. He does not stop talking. He loves to sing. He's recently been in a play, and he was the narrator, so he talked very well throughout the whole play. He actually plays a lot of different sports. He's in Special Olympics, and he loves to play baseball, doing very well. He's going to be our forever child because he's going to need to have that extra care due to his brain damage and different things like that, so that he'll always have to have somebody else do his own treatments. My daughter, she's phenomenal. She just graduated with a degree in biology and a degree in chemistry, and she's going on to grad school in pharmacology. Our daughter decided to go ahead and start trying to learn how to do venous accessing by herself using Coagadex, which she never really had any interest in trying to do before, because of the fact that she just felt like with a PCC, it's going to take too long, she's going to blow a vein, it's just going to take too much out of her. And so with Coagadex, she was able to learn how to do venous accessing. It was a long road to learn how to do that. However, it really changed her life. Another reason why physicians really need to recognize the symptoms, check for factor X deficiency, and just treat appropriately is I've been out there, I've met people, I know my experience. I know one family who they lost a child, an infant, due to the symptoms that were being presented as a brain bleed, but yet the baby died. And it's just tragic. Doctors need to understand the importance of knowing what factor X deficiency is. My take-home message for physicians would be, please, no more brain bleeds. Understand this disease, know it, see that there is possible neurological bleeding. I know personally how hard it has been on my family and how devastating this disease can be, but it doesn't have to be.